our small actions can lead to big change.
Mm.
And I didn't know that that moment was going to define so much of what I do, but that was also the moment where I really took myself out of the seat of the victim into the driver's seat.
Hello, beautiful humans. It's a pleasure to be with you today. You know, sometimes you meet someone who leaves you with this feeling of awe. That's what I felt when I met and got to know Marisa Hamamoto. Marisa is a stroke survivor, and recently she's been diagnosed with both autism and PTSD. Yet in 2015, she founded Infinite Flow Dance, a nonprofit professional dance company that employs dancers with and without disabilities to dismantle biases and promote inclusion. Marisa is the winner of many awards. She is the first professional dancer to be named to People Magazine's Women Changing the World, to InStyle Magazine's Badass 50, and to CBS News's People Making a Difference. She has appeared on Good Morning America and The Today Show, and she is a transformational speaker who moves hearts, bodies, and minds, keynoting for the world's leading businesses to inspire inclusivity and a greater sense of purpose. I am so pleased to have Marisa on the show. Welcome, Marisa.
Hi, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me. I know it's been a hot moment here.
We met a few years ago in person, and then COVID happened, and then life happened. So yeah, it's been a while, but I'm so glad to reconnect with you.
Yeah, I think it was just like by chance that we were like sitting right next to each other at lunch. So that was like, I was like, wow, this is like coincidental.
I know. I was like,
Yeah.
this is a girl after my own heart. I saw a lot of my own story in your story and a lot of similarities. And so I just like couldn't wait to have you on the show. So you've got to tell everybody about your story because you've been dancing since you were a young girl. But like many girls who look like us, we're both Asian, you received some criticism about your body. Can you tell us about what that was all about?
Yeah, well, how I got into dance, let's just start there for a second. So I grew up in Irvine, California during the 80s and 90s. And Irvine at this time was maybe 4% Asian American. Strangely, it's like 45% Asian right now. So the Asian population has significantly grown. But anyways, when I was growing up, my family being Japanese American was a minority. And at school, I got picked on for looking different. I went to a predominantly white school, and just for the mere fact of looking different, like I got made fun of, whether it's my eyes, my skin color, etc. So at school, I realized that our differences can divide us. The highlight of my week was this once a week ballet class I took after school. And though I was the only girl of color in ballet class, something about moving my body to music with the other girls made me feel like I belonged. So at the age of 6 and 7, like I intuitively understood that dance unites us and that dance is a universal language that belongs to all of us. During my teenage years, I aspired to become a ballerina. And that was when I was starting to live in this duality, which I still live in today. And that duality is that on one end, I know in my gut that dance is a universal language that belongs to everyone. Yet the dance world, the dance industry makes it seem like dance is exclusive to only a few people. So as I was aspiring to become a ballerina, I was constantly told that I don't have the right body for ballet. I'm too big. My joints are not flexible enough. My feet don't point. My shoulders are too broad. My neck is too short. It was this constant criticism that my body just wasn't right for ballet. I encountered the same thing years later when I moved to LA and pursuing this commercial dance career, and then being told that I don't have the look of the Hollywood dancer, and that because I'm Asian American, I don't fit the role of certain type of dancers, including ballroom dancers and salsa dancers. So anyway, my life theme, and I know that we'll talk more about what I do today, but this constant not fitting the box of some type of dancer has been like my life story. And to this day, I still do live in the duality of knowing that dance is a universal language that belongs to everyone. And that is what is the truth. Yet there is the other side, the actual dance industry, the dance world, society that thinks that dancers have to be a certain way and dance is exclusive for only a few people.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when you're young, if somebody makes fun of the way that you look, it will instantly drive insecurities into your body. I remember going into dance and feeling liberated like you did. But then when you get to a certain point where beyond the cuteness of being a young girl in a tutu, when you start really taking it seriously and then getting to the point where people are nitpicking at the way that your body looks when you're trying to dance or when you're doing a performance, then it exacerbates those insecurities.
And you're absolutely right. I think when you're growing up as a kid, when you're told that your skin color is wrong or your eyes are ugly or your body is just not right, it hurts and you feel like you're not enough. Like you feel like that something is wrong with you. But the reality is it's actually the societal, systems and the stigma and the discrimination, the stereotyping that is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think recognizing that later in my life, which led to the work I do today, is kind of like my life project in a way, So
yeah, no, I think that it is extraordinary because it is true that once you get to a place where it becomes work, it's less about the expressiveness and the beauty and the feeling of freedom when you're dancing and more about competitiveness, competitions, performance. And it gets to be not so fun. It gets to be that people are holding you up to this bar that was not necessarily the reason why you started it in the first place. And so it seems like you've kind of turned that on its head and really found what you loved about it and what it really was intended to be for you. And that's where you kind of followed your heart there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that there is something that happened senior year of high school that became a significant event. And, later on, I recognized it was a significant event. So as a teenager, I was constantly rejected as a dancer because dance was kind of like my life in a way. It was like where my teenage years were unhappy years in so many ways because I just felt constantly rejected as a dancer. My parents were seeing this and not being artists, not being athletes, not understanding kind of this competitive world that I was in, just wanted me to be happy and wanted me to have a positive experience the last year of schooling. So they insisted that I go to a more positive environment school. So we happened to find the Idlewild Arts Academy, which is a boarding performing arts high school 2 hours away from Los Angeles. And thankfully, I got a tuition scholarship. It's kind of an expensive school. And I got into this wonderful high school that was just not only known for its really awesome academics and arts education, but it was also known for its diversity and inclusion. It was one of those schools where gay kids got to be gay. And there was, I think, 20 to 25% of the student body was international students. So naturally, this sense of multiculturalism was celebrated. And so this was the first time where I actually felt like I belonged at school. And it was a really awesome year. Got exposed to a lot of different things, both academically and in the arts, and also just being in this beautiful campus in the mountains too. So it was an awesome year. At the end of the school year, the last student dance concert was a student choreography concert where the senior dance students had an opportunity to choreograph something. And I was a senior. There was 36 students in the dance department. 12 of us were seniors. So pretty large senior class considering how small the department is. And as student choreographers, we were assigned to pick the music, pick the cast, and turn that information into the dance office. So that's what we did. A couple of days later, when I knew that casting was going to be announced on our department bulletin board, I was really anxious to see which of my friends had selected me into their work. So I went into the dance studio a little earlier than everyone. And so, I walked into the dance studio and here I am in front of this bulletin board. And I go up and down these 3 sheets of paper, the casting notice, and I noticed that my name is missing. And the only place that I saw my name was choreographer for my own work. I looked again and my name is not there. And I started to cry. It's one thing to be rejected by authority and institutions, but it's another thing to be rejected by your own peers. And being rejected and excluded by your own peers really hurt me. I thought this was the first time at school that I belonged. And I just couldn't believe that I was going to end my high school years, again, excluded all over, despite consciously choosing a school that had a culture of belonging.
Yeah.
But, when I looked up and down down the sheets of paper again, I noticed something else and noticed that there were 7 other students missing. And those 7 other students were mostly from the lower grades. None of them were seniors. And I was like, this is wrong. This is a student dance concert and everyone should be able to participate. And this isn't some Broadway professional something, and it just didn't make sense that 7 other students were excluded. And I was like, well, this is also Idlewild Arts Academy. Like, this is a school known for its diversity and inclusion. This is wrong. And the feeling of injustice in that moment was so strong that somehow, out of the whim, like, I took out a pencil out of my backpack and wrote down all 7 names into my own cast. And long story short, 5 weeks later, we had an amazing performance. I barely knew these 7 dancers that I had included last minute, but got to know them quite well. And even though I was a very new choreographer, I will say that I think I did a good job utilizing the unique talents of my cast and creating something special. At commencement, I was named Dance Major of the Year, but the bigger win was this. Since I graduated high school over 20 years ago, there was a policy placed in the dance department that made sure that every dance student participated in the student choreography concert. And it's been over 20 years now, and that policy is still there. So what I learned from all of this is that our small actions can lead to big change. And I didn't know that that moment was going to define so much of what I do, but that was also the moment where I really took myself out of the seat of the victim into the driver's seat. This moment of just taking out a pencil leading to lasting change. This is something that later on in my life became a big memory and motivation to do the work I do today.
I definitely see a theme starting to brew. So I want to talk about 2006 because you were in college at that time, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were in a dance class at that time?
Yes.
Can you tell us the incident that happened in a dance class in 2006?
Sure. I was a senior college student at Keio University in Tokyo. And, at this time, I was kind of secretly dancing. So I was going to school, working part-time, and giving myself kind of like a second chance to my dance career. So I had already failed trying to pursue a ballet career, had quit dance, went to college in Japan, out of all places. And dance was initially kind of just this recreational hobby as I went to school. But, the dance bug kind of got into me and I started to dream again. Like, why can't I have this dance career that I wanted? So I started to dance a little bit more intensively, but it was kind of a secret. I didn't want people to know that I was actually pursuing a professional dance career. Again, when I had already failed at one. So July 26, 2006, I was taking a contemporary dance class outside of campus late at night. It was one of those great dance days where your body is like flying through space. Everything is working. Everything feels good. And so I was having this good dance day. And in the middle of that, I felt my elbows tingle and momentarily fell to the ground. I couldn't move my arms, couldn't move my legs, and had lost sensation completely from the neck down. A couple days later, I was diagnosed with spinal cord infarction, also known as spinal stroke, and was told by the doctor that I may never be able to walk or dance again. And for me, at that time, not being able to walk meant not being able to dance. And it actually felt like it was the end of my life because my whole life revolved around dance. And I couldn't see how I can live without being able to dance.
Now, did you do like a head whip, or was there any particular move that you can think of that might have caused the injury?
No, not the actual class, but I will admit to, I look at the month before, leading up to the stroke. I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't sleeping. I'm a pretty organized person. This is as messy as we get here in my living room. Not being okay with having a couple light stands in the background of a recording here. But anyways, I am a pretty organized person by nature, yet my whole room was just like a mess, which is unusual. So just leading up to that, I will say I was not taking good care of myself in any way, shape, or form. Also mentally too, this was senior year and my brain is already thinking about, once I graduate college, I want to go to Europe and audition. And so I was putting a lot of pressure on myself as a dancer. And I was also tiptoeing around like just, I'll admit, I think I'll admit to trying to people please, and just get validation from outside sources besides myself. That was a big thing back then. And so anything that anyone said that was even a little bit negative would really hurt me. And so psychologically, I was just in this place where things were just not healthy, altogether. So now, if you tell a doctor that, he'll say, well, that has nothing to do with the stroke.
He would probably ask, is there any pre-existing condition that might have led up to it? But aside from the stress of being a senior and not really taking good care of yourself, but you were still dancing and you were still doing things that were active, but it just seemed like something that was just out of the ordinary for what the continuum was that you were on.
Yes.
Wow.
From a spiritual place, or from sometimes, life hits us with like these traumatic events to wake us up, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure, yes, sure we all have had some of them. So for me, how my mother, my aunts, and I interpreted all of this was that it was a wake-up call for me to recognize that I can't continue to live this unhealthy lifestyle. And some of this was related to food. There's all this pressure to lose weight, and I'm kind of a big bone girl. I'm 138 pounds at 5'5", and I'm naturally not a little tiny girl. But, it seemed like, again, to fit into that box of a dancer, I was just dieting excessively. And so that plus not sleeping, drinking too much coffee, it was a wake-up call for me to go, okay, we can't continue to live like this. It was also a wake-up call for my family, I have to admit. We had some, without going into the details, when my grandma passed on my mom's side in Japan in year 2000, we had some family politics. And I'm just going to leave that there. Family just kind of fell apart as a result of grandma passing away. And since then, my family on my mother's side had kind of gotten disconnected from each other. My stroke brought everyone together around my bed. And I think since then, we've been at peace. Everybody's gotten along. Everybody has been invited to each other's weddings and kind of big events. And so I think like how my mom and my aunts, my mom's sisters kind of interpret this as, oh, grandma, who had died when I had graduated high school, decided to kind of, even though Marisa had to suffer through the stroke, decided to bring everyone together in peace and in health through this traumatic experience. It was also a wake-up call for me to just be really mindful and grateful of my life, my body. And since that day, there is not a day where I'll walk into a dance class or some dance rehearsal, or, I also roller skate as a hobby now. Like anytime I move my body, it's like this gratitude ritual.
Yes.
That I go through. And yes, am I perfect at it? No, sometimes I get into my head about what I'm doing right and wrong and being distracted by, the people around me or some drama that's happening around me. I'm definitely not perfect, in this either, but at some point, even on a day that's just, stressful and chaotic with whatever that's going on, during the 2 hours inside of the dance studio, I always make sure that I at least leave the dance studio thinking, thank you for this time.
And that is the beauty of the yin and the yang of it all, where you do see that something like a health scare, something like a loss of life, puts everything else into perspective. It can, when there's illness, it can bring health and people coming together. It can bring love. It can bring families together, because they're like, what in the world were we fighting about? Why are we wasting time when, there's passing of time? There's Marisa who's here and suffering through this ailment. Why can't we all just be loving and kind to each other? And so, it does shift. If you let it, it can be a great teacher, and it can help to guide the rest of life in gratitude. So that's a nice story. It's amazing that happened. Your family was able to benefit from that for sure.
Yeah, today, I don't consider myself physically disabled. I did walk out of the hospital 2 months later.
Yeah, you say that you were still psychologically scarred from that. Physically you might have been okay, but it's kind of kind of like that still carries with you. There's probably some fear that happens when you've gone through a crisis. Will it happen again? What does this mean? Am I out of the woods? So I can
Absolutely.
imagine it must have been scary times.
Yeah, for sure. Like, the stroke triggered a lot of trauma from the
Mm.
past. And a lot of that trauma is related to rejection as a dancer, the stresses of, I think, being bilingual, bicultural, and not quite understanding my place in either culture and feeling insecure about both sides of myself in that way too. I will admit a stroke triggered trauma from a rape that I had during my late teens from a dance teacher. And I'll say that, I'll admit, this dance teacher was not very supportive of my dance career. You would think that, God, he's my dance teacher. Dance teachers are supposed to be supportive of their students, but he's not. But I look at it as like, perhaps this is a little bit how relationships that have domestic violence kind of go when you become codependent on each other. And even though you know that it's wrong to be in that relationship that's violent and toxic, you feel like
it's some sort of a power struggle and causes an imbalance and dysfunction.
Yeah. So, between that and the stroke actually having had happened in a dance class, I was definitely traumatized to go back dancing for a while.
Yeah. So 4 years, you really just kind of hung up your dance shoes, but then you decided to go back to it. So how did you muster up the courage to finally give it a try again?
A couple things. I have one of my best friends who is 15 years older and is a very famous contemporary dance choreographer based in Japan by the name of Motoko Hirayama. I had met her prior to this stroke. And in fact, I was actually dancing in her classes and in some of her choreography, not the day that the stroke happened, but around that time, I was kind of a little bit closer involved with her. So I happened to have lunch with her one day and, I really admired her. And, she blurted out something saying, I think if you can't build a professional dance career by the age of 30, then I think you should forget it. And, again, she's the university professor overseeing a lot of dancers. So this is probably what she tells them. Now, at this time, I was 27, 28, I believe. And so I was like, oh, I'm still young enough to pursue that, because I grew up with ballet. And in the ballet world, they say, well, if you don't have a contract with a ballet company by the age of 18, forget it. I came from that way of thinking. But then here's another very successful contemporary dancer in Japan saying, well, get the career going by the age of 30. And so that was enough for me to go, oh, I still have time. Now, today I would say even 30 is young. I feel like you can pursue your dream at any point in your lifetime. That's my personal opinion now. But that conversation made me go, oh, I actually do want to dance. Like I just finished grad school, and finishing grad school was a pretty big deal. Like I really didn't want to go to grad school. It was my backup plan. I had gotten a full ride scholarship. So in a way, when the doctor said that I shouldn't go on a plane for a while after my stroke, I was kind of stuck in Japan. So I took the opportunity to go to grad school when I really didn't want to. So anyways, I had finished grad school, and as I was thinking through what I want to do in life next, dance kept on coming up, but I didn't know how. I really didn't know how to get back. I just knew that I didn't want to go back to ballet. Like I didn't, even though that was like maybe the only thing I kind of knew. And I didn't want to go to contemporary dance because that was where my stroke happened. So I just kind of said, all right, universe, just bring me whatever. And surely enough, a few months later, I found myself at a holiday party in Tokyo. And this was kind of like a business holiday party attended by probably about 100 Japanese people, ages 40s, 50s, and 60s. So me being in my 20s, I was young. And in the middle of this party, there was a salsa dance performance. And after the salsa dance performance, the salsa dancers, the couple came onto the floor again and said, okay, it's everyone's turn to dance. And so they showed us this very simple 6-step salsa step: left, right, left, left foot forward, right foot back, like very, very, very simple step that they showed. And they had everyone just repeat, and they turn on the music. And I'm telling you, Jennifer, us Asian people, and especially Japanese people, do not like to get up onto the dance floor and dance. That is just not in our culture. I think Filipinos are a little different in this regard. But anyway, Japanese people are not the type to just bust out moves on the dance floor, especially older people. But I have never seen so many Japanese people just come alive in that moment. And I was just kind of in the mix of just people like just I mean, I can still see the scene really vividly, and just people are just happy moving. Whether they were doing the step right or wrong, it didn't really matter. Everybody was just moving their bodies somewhat to the beat of the music or not, and just having fun. And I was too. And that was when I was brought back into my body and realized that I mattered. I mean, in full transparency, I think during this dark time, after the stroke, there were times where I just kind of questioned my existence, of whether or not my existence even mattered. Like, if I went today, would anyone even care? But stepping this salsa step with these somewhat drunk Japanese people around me and having a really good time and having a good time myself, just the act of moving my body to music, that made me feel like I mattered, So, and that's a big thing today. Like, a lot of my teaching dance, like I tell people, move your body how you want to feel. Like when you move your body with joy, and that joy will return to you. It's kind of like that. Our body language not only communicates to others, but it also communicates to ourselves. Yeah, so that's how I returned to dancing. And then a week later, I got the courage to take a salsa class. And initially it was terrifying. I was scared of human contact, just to get to the point. I knew that if I go to a salsa class, I would have to have human contact. Without going into the details, between the stroke and the salsa class, I had gotten raped another 2 times. So between the ages of 19 and 27, well, I had gotten raped twice, sexually assaulted once. The 3rd time I was able to run away, before things got worse. But, by the time I got to the salsa class, I was very terrified of human contact. Strangely, sometimes we have to face our fears to get over that fear, and that's what happened. Even though I was terrified to be dancing in contact with someone, and someone that I don't even know, and someone that's beginner, just like me, something about moving my body with another human being felt good. And I remember leaving that salsa class feeling like totally transformed. Like I had been holding on to this fear of dancing and the fear of human contact. I had isolated myself socially quite a bit, too. So, just being in the presence of people again was a big accomplishment, but it felt good. And I realized, okay, I can do this, and I want to do more of this. So one thing led to another. I ended up getting certified as a professional ballroom instructor a year later in Japan, took my certification in Japanese.
Wow.
And then, after I got my certification, I just wanted to be closer to my parents back here in Orange County, California. So I moved back to Southern California.
I see. It's a very unique parallel between using dance as expression and then giving your body permission to do certain things or to feel a certain way. And when your body is violated like that, I can only imagine the impact that had on your whole life and your whole sense of physicality, if you will. And so I am just floored by your story and by your ability to get over that hurdle and to kind of face that fear head on. Of course, as you mentioned, it took a bit of time, but for those people who are out there and feeling like they just can't give their body permission to feel any kind of joy, give their body permission because of some sort of a violation, I mean, my heart goes out significantly. And I do see that you're helping to light the way for a path forward for people to not have their body being judged or being used or being abused, but having it as this vessel, which is yours and yours alone for an expression of your own joy. And you've been able to really transmute a lot of pain, a lot of feeling insecure in yourself and in your body and in your existence. And you've transmuted that pain into your purpose in going forward. And so I would love for you to share what the impetus was behind you starting Infinite Flow Dance in 2015, because you got your ballroom certification, but you took it a next step further after that and said, I want to do more with this and I want to make a difference with this. Can you tell us what caused you to step into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I got my ballroom dance certification late 2010, moved back to to Southern California, early 2011, before the earthquake in Japan. And then I was in Orange County for some time, for a few months, just living with my parents, starting to build a teaching career. But pretty soon I wanted to pursue the performing arts and the entertainment industry. And so I moved to LA in 2012. It was a second chance, maybe a third chance to pursue this dance dream of mine. And so I went full force into it. And I was hitting the same walls again, now this time Hollywood telling me, oh, Marisa, you don't have the right look of the Hollywood dancer. You're Asian American. We don't want to see Asian American ballroom dancers and salsa dancers. Like, ballroom dancers are not Asian. And so I was hitting these walls again, as I did as a teenage ballerina or aspiring ballerina. But this time I was like, hold on here. It's not my body that's wrong or my ethnicity that's wrong. What's wrong is society and how society thinks about Asians and how society thinks about my body, and bodies that don't traditionally fit whatever dance box or societal box that we're trying to fit the body in. And so I noticed that, and that realization kind of launched me to just question, again, this duality of living, knowing in my gut that dance belongs to everyone and is a universal language, yet the world at large thinks that dance is exclusive for certain people. In 2014, like 2 years into LA and trying to kind of break into this industry, I fell rock bottom and didn't really know what to do with myself. And as I was meditating one day, I thought about pulling out that pencil again when I was in high school. And I said, who else is left out? What can I do? And how can I serve? And asking myself those questions led me to do a lot of Google searching, and a lot of Google searching around disability and paralysis, stroke, dance. And I quickly realized I found statistics that said that 15% of the global population is disabled. So that's over 1 billion people in the world. Statistically, I guess in the States, 1 in 4 Americans have a disability. Yet, I never hear about anything around disability and dance. And it was very obvious to me that dance wasn't equally accessible to disabled people. And I felt called to do something about it. But I didn't know where to start. So I said, all right, universe, just guide my way, please. I just kind of went with the flow. And surely enough, sometimes when you do open up, when you do ask the universe for direction, it gives it to you. And in this case, one thing led to another. And along that path, I met Adelpho. And Adelpho at this time, late 2014, and actually to this day, he was a professional wheelchair bodybuilder. So he was a paraplegic athlete, and he was just posting a bunch of poses of him posing in a wheelchair all over his social media feeds. And I think I found of him posing on YouTube. And I'm like, ooh, he's not shy. Maybe I can turn him into a dancer. And he lived about 30 miles away from me too. And so I stalked him for a few days on social, I think on Instagram and Facebook, and finally friended him on Facebook, followed him on Instagram, and messaged him on Facebook, and just kind of, briefly introduced myself, as a stroke survivor and dancer, exploring this area of dance and disability, and just seeing, just exploring it, and just asked them, would you like to try dancing with me? And strangely and surprisingly, he said yes, and so we got into the studio a couple of days later, and I was initially terrified to dance with Adelpho. I had a lot of fear around dancing with someone using a wheelchair. Am I going to hurt him? That was a big one. But also, I'm I don't know what the heck I'm doing and what I'm getting into. Adelpho, on the other hand, I don't know if he was scared or fearful, but he had zero formal dance experience. He could not count the music. He knew nothing, nothing. So we came together very awkwardly. But, after a couple hours, even though what we were doing in the studio is nothing like what you see today in our videos, it was definitely probably a lot of just not even dance. It's probably just connecting hand to hand and moving in space, but not necessarily anything refined. But, after a couple hours of dancing with Adelpho, I realized that dance dancing with him was nothing different from dancing with anyone else. And this was like a big pivotal moment for me, realizing that, when you're dancing with someone, you see beyond, race, color, size, age, gender, disability, sexual orientation, etc. And this experience of realizing that dancing with Adelpho, using a wheelchair, being a total beginner was nothing different from someone standing. Like that night, all I can think of was, wow, if every single person in this world can have this experience of connecting human to human, heart to heart with someone, and maybe someone that you never thought you would connect with, or maybe it's like a perceived enemy of yours, then perhaps this world, perhaps we can eliminate war. That's how, as far as my thinking went. And that kind of feeling was so strong that I decided to take action. And eventually that led to infinite flow, creating infinite flow.
That's incredible. You guys started at ground zero. I had no idea that he had no training whatsoever. That's amazing. And I love how you've described that, like the wheelchair all of a sudden just was like dissipated. It just disappeared. And it was just you and him connecting eventually on just a soul level, heart to heart, and being able to move and create. I love that.
Yeah, it's not that the wheelchair disappeared, because I actually feel like, and it's something that I've actually been called out on how we talk about, disability, because as you know, disability is also an identity. And for some, and for maybe for others, no, but it's not that the wheelchair disappeared, but it just tested conventional thinking. Now, here we are, 8 years later, Infinite Flow has expanded out of a wheelchair dance company. Currently I have 12 dancers. We have dancers who are deaf, blind, neurodivergent, with physical disabilities, invisible disabilities, chronic illnesses, those that are non-disabled. We are kind of like this little...
Truly inclusive.
Yeah, that represents diversity and inclusion. I don't like to call us inclusive because we don't represent everything under the sun. And that's something that occasionally I get called out on if we call ourselves inclusive. But I would like to say that, our company kind of promotes inclusion and, kind of sends out the idea of inclusion. Mm-hmm. Yes, we are dismantling biases in the sense that we are showing untraditional bodies dancing beautifully in space. However, I like to say that, Infinite Flow is about showing the beauty of what we can be together. So it's kind of the infinity sign itself, to me, represents two people dancing as one in harmony and eternity. So with Infinite Flow, yes, okay. My dance company does look a little superhuman, and that's something that, sometimes the critics will say that, we look too able. However, it's really about getting people to think about disability differently. And I'll say little tiny success stories that I've heard is someone who saw a performance or was in one of our community workshops and that had little exposure to disability. I'm thinking about one person actually right now. She called me like weeks later saying, hey, I am holding a birthday party and I realized that I booked a venue for my birthday that's not wheelchair accessible, yet I want to invite someone that I met at your workshop to this venue. Mm-hmm. What should I do? And I said, well, are you able to change to a different venue? I don't think you're going to be able to get an elevator installed, between now and then. She's like, well, yeah, if that's the only option, I'd rather have this person that I met come than not. And so she changed the location, and that's just awareness. It's just awareness. I've had another woman who is a frequent speaker and kind of pretty up there leader that happened to see our performance. And she texted me saying, hey, if I use the phrase fall on deaf ears, is that inappropriate? And I said, well, is there another way to say that? And so then she found out a different way to kind of what she wanted to say. I said, look, you probably could still use that, and depending on the setting, and it's probably better you're not. But the fact that she was just aware, just put that into her awareness.
Yeah.
It's huge. And so it's change has been made. The world is accessible. It's inclusive. We have empathy towards each other. And in order to get there, we want people around us to be the change makers and to be the change catalysts. These little tiny things. It's like, again, small action leads to big change. And when I hear of these little actions that have been taken as a result of seeing our work or experiencing something that we put on, then I know, okay, we got to just amplify what we do and continue doing what we're going to do. So right now, Infinite Flow's mission, which I rewrote a couple months ago, is to create a more inclusive world, one dance at a time. And I added that one dance at a time consciously, not just because it sounds good, but it's really like just knowing that we're still a small organization. Hopefully we'll be a bigger one soon, but just knowing that, yes, it's like small little actions that lead to bigger change.
I will say being in the disabled community can feel like a minefield sometimes to me. And it sounds from the way that you were speaking about some of the feedback that you've gotten and some of the things that you've heard. And that's never the intention. I mean, no. It's obvious to me that you put forth your heart and soul into Infinite Dance to create something beautiful and create access where there was not, to create joy among people who perhaps did not have an outlet for that kind of joy before. And that is lovely. Now, semantics, I've definitely heard the don't call it differently abled, don't feel sorry for me, don't let it fall on deaf ear. Like there are certain things where I would rather somebody come up to my son with all of their heart and all of their energy, say hello and ask as many questions as they can without worry of judgment or feeling rude or saying the wrong thing. Because I think the fear of judgment gets in the way, or that sensibility that I'm going to offend somebody or that somebody is offended gets in the way of progress. I truly believe that. I feel like if we can all just do the best we can, and we know that, like, if we have that mentality that people have the best intentions and we're all doing the best that we can. And yeah, feelings can be hurt if something is said, but if you're able to clarify it with like, hey, by the way, I don't really like being called that, or I don't like that kind of phrase. And just no worries. It's like, and not making a big like, cancel culture. I'm going to start, just forget the wrong thing. Yeah. And that's what inclusion is all about. It's not creating wars and battles with each other, especially within the disabled community. Yeah. And so, and I love how you were saying, you created your own list, you created your own box. You took that initiative to try to move past feeling sorry, feeling the victimhood, feeling the pain. And let's just like, it's up to me. I have responsibility for changing my life and going forward in this beautiful way that I can envision. And it may change and I may hit a wall and it may convert into something else that the universe has yet to reveal to me. But that is there. It is there, that purposefulness of saying, I'm going to erase those insecurities, those pains, those issues, those icky feelings that I had in my body. Poof, they're gone. And I am going to just be nothing but a vessel of joy going forward, despite what my quote unquote limitations might be, because that to me, it might be my own issue. Those are mine to deal with. And I'm going to create something beautiful in my own way, in the way that I know how to. And that is just lovely. And I can say that I know your impact. You may not feel it every single moment of every single day, but your impact is so meaningful. And I am here to say, do not quit. Do not quit what you are doing, girlfriend, because I think that you have some magic within you and you're doing something so special. As a former dancer myself who could never have made it to, and I shouldn't use that word never, but it was like I gave up on myself, when I was a gymnast and a dancer early on and all of those things. And I was like, well, that'll be a nice hobby. But you were like, no, I don't want it to be a hobby. I want to do this professionally. And I think that that is so cool. That takes courage. It takes, well, how can I reroute this thing and make it my own? And so, you can do these things and really create inspiration for a whole lot of people who otherwise wouldn't know that these things were possible. So thank you for creating such beauty and art.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful comment going, oh my gosh, you are so good at you're good at this hosting.
I'll always be a hype queen.
I think we are all a work in progress. And, for me, I am nowhere near perfect, and I get triggered by stuff all the time. And what's interesting is sometimes it's in your passions that you actually get triggered the most. So something that you just fall in love with, that you love to do, it's within that sometimes you just come across your own limiting beliefs or your own insecurities. And so, and I think those are meant to show up so that you could could work through it. And it's a process. It's not like a heal and done, situation at all. So I'm very grateful for, what I do. And so, so I'm ready for this new kind of evolution in my life. Yeah. So
it's so interesting that you say that, because the name of this podcast used to be called Role Models. And I recognize that putting people up on a pedestal in some way creates that separation. And so, coming back to, this is the Human Beauty Movement podcast. We are all human. None of us are perfect, but some of us have these compelling stories that can provide a nugget of inspiration to somebody else. And it doesn't matter who you are, you can really help to inspire or create some seed of an idea, some spark of an interest in somebody else as well. And it can create a ripple effect that we will probably never know what the full impact truly is, but we know that it can start with us. And so, that it starts with you. And I have a feeling we'll be collaborating in the future.
No, we will.
Marisa, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show today. And I am just looking forward to what you have coming up next.
Thank you so much. You are absolutely incredibly talented, at this.
Thank you so much, Marisa.
Bye.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Human Beauty Movement podcast. Be sure to follow, rate, and review us wherever you stream podcasts. The Human Beauty Movement is a community-based platform that cultivates the beauty of humankind. Check out our workshops, find us on social media, and share our inspiration with all the beautiful humans in your life. Learn more at thehumanbeautymovement.com. Thank you so much for being a beautiful human.